Good morning. Yesterday, um, Dell and I had the morning, and we were discussing Sunday night some things about role playing, Space Age of Man, development of Space Age of Man, etc. And I had just mentioned in passing that I'd like to you know, just run a session, right? Just straight up. Let's just play a game. I've talked about this before. In Darkest Warrens and Astonishing Interplanetary Adventures by Scott Malthouse are they were the inspiration to change my attitude about role playing, and they changed my attitude about how I wanted to GM sessions, and that led to the development of Dark Age of Man. And in all of this, the last few years, playing different games, being a player in different games, running stuff like Simba Room and other things, but coming away and running, of course, our game, Dark Age of Man, and then, of course, working and releasing Man v Beast, which is basically a D20 roll under hack, so to speak, simple one-off kind of adventure games. Um, and then, of course, doing our Space Age of Man early stages of development. And I had mentioned to Dell some of my frustrations, and I've talked about these frustrations also candidly with Anthony on the channel about the perspective of in person as in character as character play. That's led to some conversations about communication and how do we communicate, how do we do this thing, and I've talked a lot about performance. I have zero interest now in being an entertainer as a player or a GM, but I do want the experience as playing the game from a character's headspace and experiencing that. So that also means, again, how do I parallel the how I like to GM with also, getting that opportunity, bringing that opportunity out for players as well as myself as a player. And so in voicing some of my frustrations, mostly disappointment in mostly disappointment in the industry as a whole. And I've had these disappointments. The one thing that has not changed for me since I came to YouTube in 2010 is my disappointment in the industry as far as the idea that somehow rules that cover everything, rules that are cumbersome, mechanics that are cumbersome, they all to me smack of tabletop board gaming. They all really get in the way of the simplicity that is game and is also role play. So again, in some of my private frustrations with Dell, again, I said, I had this overwhelming feeling of doing something and running something, getting back to the thing that inspired me 5 years ago. And so Dell said, "Hey, man, I'm off tomorrow morning. Let's do it. Let you run something." And so I said, "Fine. I want to use AIA, which is my favorite tabletop role-playing game, or IDW. Either one, they're identical. This one's fantasy, one's science fiction. They are one-page RPGs. They're free for the most part. I mean, you pay what you want or whatever. And in my opinion, they're all you need to play any role playing. I don't care if you're playing fantasy, science fiction, post-apocalypse. It's zero. The genre has nothing to do with these mechanics. And I've said this before. It's evident in how many D20 games were regurgitated. The D&D formula regurgitated is Conan, regurgitated is Star Wars. Um, Games are games, and you can put a new tuxedo on that, right? And we can take that skeleton of D&D and hang a new tuxedo on it. And of course, the new thing is, was then it was, oh, there's the Genesis system. Let's put a new tuxedo on that system, the NDS system. Oh, we got 2D20. Let's hang the Star Trek on that 2D20 coat rack. And so this is normal, right? I mean, the BRP, BRP, everybody, that guy's, that's your favorite engine. So let's go ahead and put out multiple genres for BRP. This is just incredibly normal because people have their favorite systems and they'd like to play them more, but they don't want to just play one game. So it's not a knock. We are just in a copycat or derivative atmosphere, and it costs money to develop new systems. And for the most part, I've said it a million times, we really don't need much to resolve conflicts in role-playing games. And many people believe you need a rule for everything. We're going to make camp. How are we going to do that camp? How does camp affect play? And that's fine, right? But all of those things to me are obstacles to play. We just need a way to resolve if there's a conflict in camp, right? Is it difficult to make a camp? We should probably make a roll here. But nah, make your camp, get some rest. I think the mechanics should come up when we have a conflict, when we have an action or a desired thing that the character or the team, the party need to achieve, and there's just an obstacle to doing that. And I think for many of my colleagues who are talking ad infinitum, about how we communicate and how we don't use mechanical speak and how we do this thing with the most invisible, unobtrusive speak. But then they choose games that demand some of that adherence to board gamey elements. Uh, I think they fly in the face. These two things we claim with system mastery we can achieve these things, but I will, to the day I spit my last breath, drop my last die, I will tell you not true. System mastery helps, but system gets in the way depending on what it asks of the team, of the party, of the group, of the player, of the character. Right. This is not necessarily true for the GM. The GM is generally has a different role to play, and they're generally going to deal with the administration and the facilitation of the game in a different way. They're not necessarily it's not necessarily for the GM to be in a particular, you know, but the communication can aid in that enjoyment of the conversation. So I've talked about this. I want games to be conversational, and I want them generally to come from, you know, uh, less obtrusive. I don't really care if I say, hey, make a brawn roll for me. It doesn't bother me as a GM, and it certainly doesn't bother me as a player. What bothers me is we want to find out as easy as possible whether we move on to telling the failure tell or the success tell or situational change, etc. Anyway, with all of this, I was compelled again, and Dell fortunately said, hey, I got time, let's do something. So I said, listen, I'm going to run. I had prepared years ago a World War II scenario. I thought I was going to have 3 or 4 players for that. I was going to do it for my local group, and then that didn't work out. And I thought, well, maybe I'll end up running this for some of my online friends, and that never worked out. So I've just had this kind of shell of an idea for a World War II occupied France um, spy kind of a spy thing. And I told Dell, let's do it. And I said, this can work as a one-on-one. You're an agent, drop me behind enemy lines. So I briefed him. I gave him what he knows, right? What his mission is and what he knows, what his false identity is, and then a couple of NPCs that he will have a chance to develop a contact or a relationship with. The most important being a woman that is part of his cover. Um, and this he has to ultimately use that forged this anyway. For the lack of a better term, she doesn't know him, he doesn't know her, but he's going in under the guise of a Swiss lawyer who's helping administrate a inheritance for a former American woman who's married into a noble French family, and she's in occupied France. And she doesn't know him. She doesn't know anything about this, but it's a way for him to get his foot in the door in and be have an excuse to be a Swiss neutral in this town in France. And he has the excuse of spending days there under the guise of administering this inheritance to a woman who has no clue. And that would help allow him to find a place to stay and be there for an amount of time so he can eventually accomplish his mission. That was the setup. It's a skeleton setup. That's it. That's all he has. And then of course I went ahead and created an agent class. AIA does not have soldier scientist. I created an agent class for him. And I also added, so you have four attributes in AIA or IDW, typical strength, agility, brains, and charm. They don't use those terms, but those are the four main attributes that can be used for anything you would ever need to use them for. Melee, missile, movement, diving, picking up, breaking a door down, investigating, reading, and of course, charming, intimidating, etc. So four attributes cover anything you'd ever want to do. All you need is a single D6. You need to roll that number above in your attribute to be successful. The most uninhibited, unencumbers, the least cumbersome um, rule set I've ever seen, and I think it works to cover any possible thing. Now, but I didn't want him to have just constant mind checks for languages, and so I actually gave him language attributes. So he had a score in French, he had a score in Swiss, and he had a score in German. And he was an American with some French heritage, which was Dell's idea. And he's posing as a Swiss accountant, I mean, a Swiss lawyer. Um, so his Swiss was pretty good, his French was pretty good, his German was not so good. But again, that would not be unheard of for a Swiss there, and being able to speak spotty German. But I knew there would be times in the game where the stress level might require he make a language check, so I wanted him to have. And I thought AIA, how simple and smooth is this simple rule set? You could do this with skills too. Piloting is a simple score, whatever, right? But that's not the goal. You can use nimble for piloting, and we can assume that you can pilot or whatever, depending on the genre we're doing. If he says, "Hey, I want to be the pilot," matter of fact, I think AIA has pilot, right? It's soldier, scientist, pilot. So anyway, it covers the science fiction ideas of archetypes. IDW covers the warrior, the archer, the magician. I mean, the magic user, right? Archetypes. Okay. And so that covers it. And we've done it before. And again, all you need is a simple D6. That's it. One simple D6. It's got some adherence to some of the procedures that have existed since man invented, since Gygax and company started the D20. There's an initiative roll. It actually suggests there's such a thing as bull rushing and parrying and fleeing. So there's four actions a person can take, and which ironically are all basically rules, and ironically they're simple derivatives of stuff you would see in a Pathfinder game, like bull rushing and parrying. I would not have expected to see these in a simple one-page RPG. But they work and they're simple adjustments. Bull Rush gives you a +1 to brawn or something roll, and parrying gives you it reduces, their brawn roll or whatever. So they're all very simple +1, -1 adjustments or whatever, right? And you could add advantage or disadvantage to this by saying, hey, you're an advantage roll, 2 brawn dice, take the best roll. They're completely compatible with any idea that's ever been invented, right? Anytime we're using dice, we can use advantage, disadvantage, right? These are not bad ideas, right? Okay. And they're all represented in these games. Um, Almost every game has some version of this now, right? How they impact play and how we go about adjudicating them become the problem, right? If I have to constantly remind a player that no, a boon is not advantage, right? A boon does this for you, advantage does this for you. So the more intricate we get, but what it does when you define these things is it gives everybody the slate, right? What is Nash's equilibrium? We all know the rules. We all share the rules. We all abide the rules. So why do we have rules? Because it informs everyone, and we end up with the fairly ephemeral idea of a game, right? Okay, so that's why rules. If not, we end up with a lot of GM fiat. We end up with the GM saying, you know what, I'm going to give you a +1 here, right? Which works. And hopefully your GM's fair and the players understand why. And so this is why I love simple games. This is why I love AIA and IDW. Yesterday in our session, there was times where he just naturally had advantage. And I said, go ahead and do this at a +1. And he knew immediately, how simple that was. There was no, why am I at a +1? There was no negotiation. There was no conversation. I'll go ahead and roll 2 dice here because you're using a submachine gun, right? He was surprised by it. He's like, two? Just roll 2 dice, tell me what you get. That was a way of accounting for him bursting multiple bullets. Not in the rule book, but it makes complete sense. Just roll 2d6. You double your chance to hit with a submachine gun, right? And it is intuitive, right? And there's not a lot of conversation. There's not a lot of negotiation. There's not a lot of what am I doing here? It's always roll that thing, and it's simple. And for me, this is again, I've talked about my age and my maturity and my aging through gaming through the hobby. I just did I did a video talking about aging through the hobby, the sports game hobby, and how we change and how we develop and how more importantly, I think we come to a realization. Are we here to sell books for big companies? Are we here to make precious the book and the pimping of the wares? Are we here to do this thing? And which way do we do this? And what's the best way to do this? And what am I getting when I get a new rule book? Because I hope really I'm getting something unique in the setting or in the intention of the game. Because if it's about your rule system, I really don't give a shit. Your mechanical system is just one of many. It may be really unique and demand something different from how we play, but they generally don't. They're generally derivatives, right? It's, oh, this is a year zero engine. Okay, we know what that is. Oh, this is a D20 engine. Okay. And there's been this argument, system matters, and system does matter. The system tells us something about what we're trying to get out of the experience, but system very often is creates the same traditional environment over and over and over. Just instead of rolling a d20, we're rolling 3 dice 8 on a curve, 3 dice 6 on a curve, or instead of rolling 1 die for the probability, we're going to roll a handful we're going to roll a pool of dice, probabilities for probabilities for probabilities. And the smarter you are, the longer you've been around, the more you realize, oh, this is just another way to get probabilities, or this is just another way to make it different or fun to sell a system or a book. And that's not to say they don't create a different psychological effect. And to give an example of that mechanically, to talk about this a little bit in reference to Scott. So Scott's game the other day, Scott at the beginning of that TF Task Force Raven session, apologetically says, "Okay, we're going to start the session. These are the couple of things we do at the beginning of the session. They're kind of gamified." But he said it almost apologetically, as if that's a bad thing, right? And here's the irony. It's some of the most fun part of the game. So who cares if they're gamified? Right? I mean, why is that a negative thing? Why are we apologizing for gamifying the loadout? Why are we apologizing for gamifying your handle? And there's no reason to feel those things should somehow be there should not be a disclaimer. These are kind of gamified pieces. No, they're part of the experience and they're fun and they're worthy because they create an environment at the table I think works and it works great. So I kind of thought, okay, for some reason I think Scott thinks this is not good role playing. So nah, this is gaming and it creates an environment where we're going to role play better. So I I tend to be one of those guys that says, does the mechanic achieve the goal? If it achieves the goal, right? That's more important than whether it achieves some style, right? Because style can be attributed to almost any engine. How I choose to GM my game, the way I talk to people becomes my style, and I can do that no matter what game system I'm running. Some game systems make it more difficult for me to be less descriptive or whatever, right? Some demand I'm more descriptive because of some engine or rule, right? Okay. Something like 2D20 demands that I adhere to doom and threat and therefore utilize it a particular way in which the players are aware of the doom and the threat I have. I have to have a pile of chips so they can look and go, holy shit, he's got a lot of threat, or doom. He's got a lot of doom there, right? And so you need a visual representation of that, and that becomes part of the game. And so this impacts how I GM Conan or 2D20 Star Trek or something, right? With these things, doom and threat. So, and these things matter, and they create a board game or gamified experience. But the point is, most people who play role-playing games, they want to experience a game and they want to experience it socially, and they aren't really concerned about a certain thing, like maybe being in character as character, agency, player agency. Am I in a story? Am I in an event? Or am I free to make decisions that in the event will come and the things, the emergent play and emergent story will come out of those things. So um, I basically give this brief mission and this brief, these are all you have. Dell, you know a couple of people. This is the time. This is the situation. This is your mission. Good luck. And he has these variables, and he lands, and he is ultimately, in a way, and for the lack of a better term, he's in a sandbox. He can choose any route he wants. He can sneak into Marnay and as his undercover and meet people before he goes out to the estate. He could jump a German soldier and suit up as a German soldier and try to infiltrate the compound and learn what he can. He can, any way Dell wants to go about playing his agent in this environment to achieve the goal, which was to stop or learn as much about this general and stop this general if he could. That's it. That's his only goal. Now, how he goes about it is his business, but you've got to give them information. And that information is the big part of communication. The more a player knows, the more a player can take agency and act. And again, or you could argue authority to act, because the more information they have, the more they can act within the bounds of the rules that we have agreed upon, the GM and the player, which is where we get into Dark Age of Man, where we're saying, go ahead and take a little more agency because technically we're giving you a little more authority by the fact that I'm a naive GM, I'm a naive narrator. All I know is this is our system. Now what? So yes, did I run yesterday as a naive narrator? I did. Did I know the key components like we do in Dark Age of Man with Dredgewater? There's a town, there's NPCs. They may have some minor motivations, but mostly there's the difference is he had a definite goal. He was supposed to go in, learn this information, and either get out with that information or help stop that process, whatever it might be. It's up to him, kill the general, not kill the general, whatever. So even there, he had agency as to how he wanted to deal with the situation, but he had a goal. And then I gave him enough variables that he could parachute in and pick a direction, so to speak. Uh, but did I use a random seed chart? I did not. I used odd and even on my D6. If I rolled odd at any time that there was some new direction Dell went, if I rolled odd, that meant I needed to complicate things. If I rolled even, I let things be what they were. So there were a handful of times in the game where I roll, if it's odd, I would complicate the situation. And I didn't always know how I would do that. Sometimes it was obvious. For instance, Dell was investigating the priest hole. He wanted to make sure it was, so he parked his car and he got out of his car and he was investigating the brush where there was supposed to be the tunnel back to the villa. And I rolled an odd when he got, so as Dell would announce an action, right? Depending on the situation, I would roll the die. And if it came up odd, I knew I wanted to complicate it. So it was simple. I complicated it by having two German soldiers on patrol stumble across his car, or actually across him. I think he was, or no, he was hiding and then came out of the. But the point is, two German soldiers showed up to investigate his car, and he was hiding in the bushes, and they investigated, and then they ultimately flattened a tire so they would have some control over the situation if whoever came back to the car. It would give them a chance to maybe catch up to them if they were changing a tire or something. So the German soldiers just flattened a tire and walked off, and leaving him now with a flat tire to continue. He was in the villa investigating where the general was sleeping. And I rolled an odd roll. So every room that he would check, I would break a roll for every room he checked to see if there was a situational change or if I was going to complicate it. So the first door, no complication, just a sleeping captain. Second roll, complicated, an awake prostitute that could have, depending on how he handled the situation, she could have screamed, she could have woke up the German she was sleeping with, whatever, right? So it just all I did was introduce a witness, a woman laying there who sees him open the door and spying on the room. So it's not only am I liberated with this naive narrator seat, but now I'm saying, wait, we know that we're in a sandbox. We know it's French occupied France. We know it's 1940. It's April 1944. We know Marnay. We know there's a villa that he's investigating. We know that he's staying in an estate. We know that there are these key NPCs. And we know the rule system is as simple as on his character sheet, he literally had seven variables, four attributes, and three languages. Then he had a weapon. The rules for combat are super easy. We need 1d6, roll equal to or higher than whatever the number on his sheet is. Uh, um, and I roll the dice for enemies if I want to, right? Um, Combat is simple. If you get hit, you're wounded. If you don't get hit, you're not wounded. It's a wound. You get so many health points and you die. So all of these things are known, and we know all these things. So therefore, those things are just don't have any effect on our ability to role play or to enjoy the game or to recognize risk reward. So what do I want? I want communication. I would like a shared language, but again, if we have a very soft system, an almost invisible system, language is never the problem. When Dell says he's doing something first person in character as character, I don't have to wonder. I don't have to say, well, what does he mean this? And so then the language is it's shared common language. He is going to race the car down the hill to escape the Germans. Oh, we're going to make a nimble check here to make sure you don't wreck the car. It's very simple. The risk is he's running from the Germans, and the risk is he could wreck the car or be caught by the Germans. The reward is he successfully gets the car away from the Germans in time to take another action. I slide into the and I tell him you seem to have outrun the Germans right now. So I come screaming to a halt. My car slides in the gravel, and I jump out and I tell her, go grab the radio. We got to run for the airfield. Right, if that's the scenario. And then there might be a roll, and I roll an odd roll, and I create a dilemma, right? If I roll an even roll, she takes off to go get the radio, and right, Dell sets up behind the car with his weapon, waiting for the Germans to, catch him. Right? If I roll odd, the Germans come rolling in, and we're in a gunfight. If I roll even, she comes out of the building with the radio, and they hop in the car, and we roll another. He tells me where he's going, and I roll another roll. If it's odd, I create a dilemma. Super flexible, very easy, and it creates, again, it allows me to stay in a way naive. But what's fun is it prompts me to have to come up with a situational dilemma. Okay. Um, and then there's scenes where there's just not going to be a lot of roles because we are, for instance, when he meets, I think we have a 30-minute conversation between him and the woman when he greets her and says, I'm a lawyer here to administer a inheritance. I think that was a 30-minute role play. I played the woman, he played, and it took a while because I could see Dell was trying to warm up to, can I tell this woman why I'm here and who I am? Can I trust that she would be an ally? And it was remarkable as he slowly got to know her and he slowly warmed up to basically telling her, hey, I'm an agent and I'm here to do a job and I need your help. And it was remarkable, but it took a long role play to work around to that. Um, what Dell said would trigger whether I would take a positive stance or a negative stance as opposed to a role, right? So it's pretty easy. Now, there are times that you would call on what's called a person check, which is your charisma check, or a mind check if he's trying to, he had a I hit him with a law question. Can you guarantee this codicil of inheritance doesn't go to my damn husband in the French government? And he needed to make a mind check to see if he knew the legal reality. And of course, he failed it and had to admit to her, no, I don't know that. And that complicated his life because then she said, what kind of lawyer can't answer this basic question? And that's where she began to recognize that he was not who he says he was, right? He was caught twice. Uh, he breached etiquette, became a little too personal, something a European might not have done, and she picked up on it. That was an odd roll, so I made an odd roll, and Dell was already. If I had not made a roll there and it had not been odd, I would not have used it to challenge his identity as a Swiss, right? So my excuse for challenging his European uh, culture was an American, only an American would get this intimate with me this quick, which may be complete bullshit, but that was the excuse that she used as an American woman, right? She's right. So, but it was an odd role that was what I used to challenge Dell's identity. And then the law question in which he failed gave me a complete freedom to challenge. You're not a lawyer, are you? And then eventually Dell had to fess up, and fortunately he found somebody sympathetic to his cause for a number of reasons. So very simple recap. Again, he parachutes in, low ceiling, in darkness, cloud cover. He successfully lands because of the high speed, low altitude parachute jump. He had to make a brawn check to not suffer a wound as he hit the ground hard. He made it. He met with his French resistance ally, Sarcy. Sarcy took him to the estate. He managed to kill time until he got closer to when you would normally knock on somebody's door. As he approached the estate, he actually met a servant that was filling the tank of a Nazi vehicle, who was the chauffeur slash butler. Um, the butler invited him in to wait until it was a normal hour. You really don't want to wake up French nobility, right? You're not going to come calling before like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. But for game's sake, I was like, well, if it's serious business, 8 o'clock. So why don't you come in and have breakfast? So he comes into the kitchen. He gets to meet the cook. He gets to meet the chauffeur. He gets to find out there's children in the house. He finds out there's a German Nazi living with him, bivouacked with them in this place. They find out that there's a husband, which he knew about a little bit, doesn't have much intel on, and then of course the woman he's there as his excuse to be there. Um, and he ultimately then meets the husband, learns some things about the husband. He then meets her. He negotiates with her. He actually tells her why he's there, his real reason why he's there. They allow him to stay in the house. He's now got a headquarters. He goes to the roof, sets up his radio, and tries to make quick communication with headquarters to let him know he's on the ground, he's there. But he fails. He realizes he's taking too long, and the Germans might triangulate this radio, so he shuts it off. Can't get the message through, but no big deal. He then spends time over a couple of days, uh, investigating Marnay, talking to Sarcy, coming up with a plan. Sarcy, I want you by midnight Wednesday night to get as many people evacuated from Marnay to the estate, to the Benoit estate as fast as possible because there's some shit's gonna go down and I'm worried it's gonna get a lot of people killed. And so they organize this, and he does this. He has a plan. He investigates to find out how he might be able to get into this place. He learns that. And then he investigates whether that's legit or not, goes all the way into the villa to the very back door and knows he can get in. And then he leaves, goes back. There's some complications. The Bueller has sent their children to Paris. Bueller's the Nazi living with him. They don't know why he sent the kids to Paris, but accused Dell that the Germans are about to do something in the village. And Bueller cares for the kids because he's been living with these kids. These kids love him, and of course, Jules and the woman react negatively to how dare you send my kids away to Paris. They don't know what he's up to. Why did he do it? Jules attempts to kill him. And that complicates Dell's life because if Bueller's killed, they've got to bury the Nazi scientist. If Bueller wasn't killed, but if he tells the SS, that's going to bring the Germans out to the estate, and that's a problem. So Dell manages this chaotic situation, and Bueller agrees to give him a couple days to get their shit together before he sends out the SS. Well, Bueller is a lying Nazi. So one of the odd rolls I made was okay. Bueller, I made an odd roll when he came back for the Wednesday, the day of this plan. I had made an odd roll when he returned to the estate. So when Dell would take an action or Dell would change locations, I would make a roll. And if it was even, we just go with where Dell's going, what he wants to do. If it's odd, I complicate it. Again, so he returned after his investigations of the whole. I rolled an odd and I said, how do I complicate this? Oh, SS is here interrogating her and they're about to take her into custody. And they're investigating what Bueller has told them. Dell doesn't have to know what Bueller's told them. He finds out that Bueller was arrested for something, and probably for sending the kids to Paris. Again, I don't know. I don't care. All I know is Bueller's been arrested, and they're trying to arrest her. He attempts to negotiate to keep her from not being arrested, but he can't. He does avoid being arrested with him. He manages to make a roll to keep this SS officer from also taking him into custody. But she now has been taken to the villa in custody. He knows Bueller is in custody, but he has to go on with his plan. So again, come midnight, he goes on with his plan. He's got to do what he's got to do. He doesn't know where she's at. He's not on a rescue mission. But as he forays into the complex, he learns about the evil German experiments. He's witness to it. Again, show don't tell. He sees these horrible things. He gets papers and he grabs files and he grabs data and he steals some vials of serum that he doesn't know what they are. And he's in the bowels. He ends up discovering she has been tortured, finds her and wants to free her, discovers Bueller's being tortured. He rescues Bueller, rescues her, and then he goes on into the villa to hunt down the general and to ultimately kills the general. And then on his way out, deposits, he only has 4 sticks of dynamite. That was all the resistance could give him. And on his way out, he deposits a stick of dynamite here, a stick of dynamite there, and a stick of dynamite here, and wraps it up by closing this priest hole with a stick of dynamite. And then with her, races off back to the estate, finds out that again, I would make odd rolls. I'd make a roll. If it was odd, I would complicate things. Well, fortunately, it appeared that all of the people that the French resistance could evacuate from Marne were showing up at the estate. So his plan was going as written. His plan was going as planned, I should say, right? And no odd rolls there to complicate the evacuation. He then calls in the plane to come get him, and he has to make a nimble check for speed to see if he can get out to the airfield about the time the plane comes down. I made an odd roll, complicate his life. That odd roll was a anti-aircraft gun that shot his plane down right before his eyes as he comes out onto the airfield or out into the fields. He witnesses his plane shot down. It's an odd roll, and we'd already been going for 4 hours and 20 minutes, and that's when I closed the curtain on the session. And we could pick up from there, or we could just do something else next time. But 4.5 hours was a lot of playtime, and it was fantastic. But again, I come away going, I came on in 2010, 29, or 2008, 2009, sometime 2010, and I talked about complex games, and I talked about um, whether there was a real value in them. Um, and I just at at this stage, uh, in all of my experiences, I come away going, no, the more procedures, the more crap. Most of it we never get to. Rarely, there's an obscure rule in the book in case that ever happens. And I think they're ultimately hurdles of entry for people to do this thing. And I think there are measuring sticks, right? I think they are. I think they are ultimately. Does that to say I would not want to see a brilliant Star Trek game? Right? Of course I do. I want to see a brilliantly written Star Trek game with all the lore and all the canon and all the juice that gets me fired up for Star Trek. But can the rules be easy? Can the rules be simple? Could I see a 400-page Star Trek rule book and only 5 pages dedicated to actual mechanics? Yeah. I would buy that for $60. Matter of fact, that's mostly what we're doing, right? Um, and so I look at most of these game books. I'm like, these game books could still exist. Alien can still exist, right? We can still have this IP, these books, The One Ring and Alien and whatever else, whatever game, pick a game. Um, but I'll never ever agree with my peers that we're going to have this kind of experience at the table solely based on mastery of the game and solely based on whether we agree on how we're going to speak. Because I think, again, um, the more we're juggling as players, the more I'm thinking about a rule, the more I'm wondering how am I going to say this, but also get the prompt from the GM to roll the dice to achieve the thing. And that's somehow supposed to express itself narratively, where everybody's involved in narration and everybody's making this interesting to look at and listen to, as opposed to nerds going, I rolled a 6. Oh, I got lost 2 hit points, right? Which I think we all get tired of. We all get tired of the game speak, right? When I tune into an AP and I hear game speak, I tune out almost instantly, unless I'm there to learn the game, right? If we're there and they're doing kind of a tutorial and I'm learning how the game mechanics work, that's different. But if you expect me to enjoy a AP, I want to hear less game speak, right? Does that mean I expect them to be actors in a play? No. Do I expect them to be in voices? No. Do I expect to be entertained? No. But do I expect to hear players as characters involved in the fiction, right? Engaged fully in the thing, not engaged in chitter chatter and game speak. And that's my preferred experience. Obviously, I'm in a very small minority, right? I want uncomplicated and I want it conversational. I want, like Dell and I, we're two guys talking. Dell can affect the voice if he wants to. Dell can speak in dialogue if he wants to. He can speak in first person if he wants to, right? If he wants to step into third person and tell me what he's doing, I don't care. As long as Dell is engaged in the fiction, not in winning the game, not in the game itself, but engaged in the thing that's right before him, right? If I tell him there are Germans coming, I want to see Dell as a character deal with Germans coming, right? Um, So anyway, it was a great, and I needed it. I needed to get grounded again. And ironically, that grounding came with AIA in a non-fantasy genre. It did not come with Dark Age of Man and or a fantasy genre. It did not come with this, the game that I've very often say is my favorite game. And certainly my favorite OSR, but I talk all the time. This is my favorite game, and there is no doubt it is not. Uh, the procedures, Moldvay is wonderful. I grew up with it and I love what it is and what it was, but the procedures get in the way. OSE, procedures get in the way. White box, move, missile, melee, blah, blah. It's all game bullshit. It's all gets in the way. When I ran basic fantasy, I ran it sans those things. Just tell me what the fuck you're doing. I'm drawing my sword. I'm attacking the goblin. Simple. That's a move. That's a melee. Yeah, you can do that. We don't need to say, okay, what are we doing now? We're moving. Oh, we're meleeing now. Tell me what the hell you're doing. And I can in my head go, oh, that's a move in a melee. We're good to go. And they don't have to get bogged down in what can I do? What can't I do? Because most people don't go beyond their realm, that thing, right? Um, and so I want it to be as invisible and unencumbered as possible. And why? Because Dell is thinking about his situation. He's thinking about, oh my God, the SS are here interrogating her. Oh shit. How am I going to deal with this? Dell was concerned about how he's going to approach that SS officer and find out what the hell's going on. He wasn't thinking about, okay, what do I have to do to talk to the SS officer? What do I need to roll for that? Am I going to be using wits here, or am I going to be rolling persuasion? He just acts as his character. And then if it calls on a roll, then hey, it's a simple mind roll or simple a language check or a simple person check, which is charm in this particular thing. Um, but I came away yesterday going, yeah, I mean, who am I kidding? There is no doubt my favorite game is AIA, are in Darkest Warrens because what happened for 4.5 hours yesterday with a very minimal setup. I mean, literally, my setup for Dell was one page of text. The time, the date, the place, a couple of people, and what his character's kind of background as far as who he was pretending to be, a Swiss lawyer there for this thing, and what his mission was. You need to find out what this general's up to and deal with it. And it's probably going to be a suicide mission, right? I put it in context. April 1944. Well, we know D-Day happened June 6th. So now his character doesn't know but there is this impending invasion, and this is important that this is dealt with before the invasion. But he doesn't know when it is. But we as players know the context of how important this mission must be. To drop a man behind into France to find out what this biochemical scientist general is doing at this villa in. And so he has everything he needs to play in the sandbox. All I need is to know what the genre is. Oh, it's occupied France. There's Germans. They're going to be speaking multiple languages. It's going to be dangerous. It doesn't necessarily have to be overwhelmed with German because it's a little village. It's not in Berlin. I mean, it's not necessarily on the front, so to speak. So it can be somewhat casual, right? It is a village, a functioning village that's occupied, and and so we already know this whole setting. We know this entire sandbox. And then all I have to do is let Dell play. And then again, I've just got to imagine that, okay, if Dell takes an action or Dell wants to change locations or Dell wants to have an effect on play, I'm either going to be doing that through dialogue and a check, or I'm going to be rolling a die to see if there's a complication. Oh, he's going to Marnay. Let me roll the die and see if there's a complication. No. So, okay, Dale, you arrive in Marnay. What are you doing? Oh, I'm going to the bakery. I want to sit around. Okay, I roll the dice. Oh, odd. There's two German officers sitting out front of the. So I don't have to make it violent. I just say, oh, there's two German officers outside the bakery, and Dell has to navigate that. Ooh, okay. Well, I'm just going to treat him. Hey, how you all doing? I'll buy him a coffee or whatever. Right. So Dell gets to play, and I know now that there's two German officers there, and right. So and Dell pursues whatever action he was trying to achieve, but it's complicated by poof. Now there's two German officers here. Dell actually tries to turn that to his favor. I'm going to sit outside on the patio and I'm going to drink coffee and eat a croissant and I'm going to eavesdrop. Oh, make a roll. He makes a roll, he fails, and they're talking too low. You know they're in German, of course, but you can't hear him. He didn't learn anything. Had he, I would have given him some pertinent information, right? I would have given him something he could use, right, to continue to decide what his plan was, because I don't think Dell at that time had developed a plan. Um, and for me, that is that is the apex of gaming. That's golden gaming to me as a player. Give me the tools and then give me the space to play. Um, I don't really want to be a character in your movie. I don't really want to be a character in your story. I want to be this character that exists in this world, and I want a way to engage what it is I'm trying to do. And I do like goal-based gaming. I don't want a Grand Theft Auto sandbox shenanigans bullshit where we just fuck around. No, no. I do like the idea that we're there to do something. I'm there to achieve something, whether it's my goal or it's the goal that's given to me by the king or um and so I want that as a player, and I desperately, of course, as a GM trying to be naive enough and provide this live space for players to do this thing. And I know most players, I shouldn't say, I don't know. I assume most players don't want that. What they want is what they get in 90% of tabletop gaming. I don't care if we change genres. I don't care if we change games. Everybody's doing the same traditional shit. It's just they're changing genres and they're changing books. They're changing the D20 with procedures and how I go about telling you a tale and putting you in the space. Or I'm doing it with Alien and this system, then I'm putting you in this story and ironically, 90% of what's happening at a role play table is identical at every table. I don't care what the genre, I don't care what the rules, I don't care the mechanics, right? And it's just the more I do this, the more I read these books, the more I play in these sessions, the more I go, yeah, this isn't happening here. And you want to know why? Because of the system, because of how it is handled, because of how it is constantly done a particular way. So, what's the old saying? Repeating the same thing and expecting a different result. And I look around and I see all of my colleagues and peers getting new books and excited about new IPs and playing new games and wanting to have this style of play. But it ends up being very similar to what they've been doing. Why? Because they're repeating the same thing, different game. And I think they think the new game, the new genre, the new IP is what's going to give them that experience. And it turns out they have the same experiences. It's just a different IP. It's a different game engine. And maybe that's not to knock it because you wouldn't do it for 50 years if you weren't enjoying it. So this is not about whether you're having fun, again, fun, or you're enjoying it or you want to do it. No, it just really comes down to me saying, what do we need to do it? Not how do we do it? What do we need to do it? Well, I don't need a rule book that has obscure rules that we rarely ever use for that what if time that they choose to do this. What happens when they're in a blizzard and it's cold? How does that affect them? I better put that on the rule book. How does it affect them? Well, if I have a device called advantage disadvantage, simple. Guys, it's cold, you're at disadvantage until you get out of this cold. That's it. We don't need a block of rules on cold weather play. We just need a mechanic that lets us impart advantage or disadvantage. And that could be a +1, it could be -1, it could be two dice, roll two dice and take the worst. It could be roll two dice, take the best. It could be whatever, right? Um, and again, this is important because I'm in the middle of this process of deciding with Dell what are we going to do with Space Age of Man? I mean, it's not just the setting. It's not just that we're going to try to continue the idea of the naive narrator, GMC. It's not just the idea that we want people to have a little more agency to go, and that means they're going to have to make some assumptions about the bakery. I don't care. I don't have to know where the bakery's at in Marnay. Dell says I'm going to pull up to the bakery. Okay, it doesn't matter where the bakery is in Marnay. We established the fact that before the war he had visited Marnay, so he said I'm going to the bakery. Dell didn't have to waste time saying, "Where's the bakery? Where's the bakery?" Or do I know where the bakery's at? He's not asking questions. Dell says, "I drive over to the bakery." We allow that assumption. It doesn't matter where the fucking bakery's at. That's just the detail. And that's a minor detail. What matters is what's going on at the bakery. What's he trying to learn at the bakery? Well, we know why he's going to the bakery because at the beginning of the session, he met his contact, and his contact told him, "I'm in hiding. So if you need to get to me, you need to go talk to the little boy that works at the bakery as a delivery boy. He'll get me and I'll find you." So he went to the bakery to find Jean-Luc. So Jean-Luc could then go get Sarsi, so he could meet with Sarsi and try to figure out a plan for how he was going to deal with this situation, thing. So the bakery was necessary because that's where he was going to find the boy, right? And that's where the boy. Now I could complicate that by the boy not being there, which I did. I could complicate that by having the bakery closed, right? I can complicate that by having the German soldier and they're smacking the baker around for some reason, and he's got to stop this potential fight between a nasty German soldier and a poor little baker. Umpteen ways to create an interesting environment for Dell, and that's going to depend a lot on the personality of the player, right? If Dell was big into action and was big into fist fighting, and he tells me I've made this guy that likes to, I might give him the Chuck Norris scenario where he walks in and finds a German picking on, bullying a little baker, and he gets to put that German in his place, right? So I can base that situational thing also on Dell's character and what Dell's trying to play, and on Dell's personality, or at least Dell's personality as that character, right? Dell wants to play the Chuck Norris hero as opposed to the smart, stealthy hero, in which he really doesn't want anything to bring his attention to him and to what's happening because he's got a job to do and he wants to get it done before shit gets crazy, right? So I knew the complication of Bueller sending the children to Paris was was going to create an environment where the next complication could be even more dangerous for his plans. And Dell instantly knew it. The risk reward for Dell when the SS were there interrogating her potentially wrecked his plans. And he knew it and he needed to deal with it so it didn't wreck what he had planned. And that became that much more tense for Dell, or at least I think so. I think Dell enjoyed it, and I think Dell felt the pressure by just a simple complication. And that's done because we're free of mechanized gobs of rules that we have to remember. Oh, right. This is social combat between him and the woman. We need to make a roll to see if he convinces her that it's okay that he's a spy. No, that was role play. And in that role play, he said things that either triggered a roll or he said things that would impact my odd or even um, complication roll, right? And I used odd or even because I didn't want to be thinking about numbers. So all I knew was when I dropped the die, if it was an odd number, it was a complication. If it was even, I just let play keep going. So I did not have a list, right? So, and I had any number of Germans that I needed. Um, and I had the rule blocks for simple, normal soldier, mook soldier, brute soldier, etc. Right? So again, the rules being so easy, I knew that if a complication created a tough guy soldier that would actually require multiple wounds to dispatch, that was a very simple thing. I just make the wounds from 1 to 4 or wounds 1 to 3. Uh, Give me the tools to be a good GM, and then our style will will show up. Just give me tools. I just need tools. I don't need rules. I don't need procedures. I want tools. This is where index card RPG was effective. Runehammer's brilliant game, right? All I need are simple ways to do this and tools. Then get out of my way and let me do my thing as a GM, and hopefully the players will engage in the thing, the fiction, not in the game, in the fiction. Don't engage in winning the sword fight and using your 16 feats, but engage in being a character surrounded by orcs. That's what I want. And your feats will show up, right? However, I'm hoping I'm playing a game where I'm not dealing with 16 feats. Your imagination of how you're fighting the orcs with your fucking sword and some dice rolls ought to be enough. And unfortunately, it's not. But it is for me, and it is for some people like Dale, I think. So anyway, this has been a long video, and um, I've probably had more frustration in the last couple of months, partially because I have been working mentally on Space Age of Man and knowing that there are things I just don't want to do. And then, of course, reading some rule books in preparation for things, and just finding myself going, why? I don't get it. Why? Um, and most of the time, it's to continually perpetuate a brand. It's continually perpetuate the consumer cycle of buying more shit. When with a simple one-page free RPG, we can do any fucking thing we want. And probably could do it more relaxed, land the communication, land the language, have that style at the table that some of us want, that freedom, that agency. Oh, and there's still authority. I had the authority when I dropped an odd number to change the situation, to complicate the situation in any number of ways I could dream up, all of which are still governed by the rules. What is combat? What are wounds? How do they attack Dale? Right? So whether I invent one Nazi or two Nazis, or whether I make the Nazis just there to do their job. I want to see your papers and challenge his Swiss a little bit, challenge his German language a little bit, maybe make him tell me a little bit about where he's coming from to challenge his so-called backstory as a Swiss lawyer, right? We're engaged in the fiction and I'm able to do those things. That's GM fiat, right? That's authority to some degree, right? Anyway, that's enough about that. The gist of this story, somehow we find a way to complicate everything we do as human beings, right? It can never just be as simple as this, and I'll never understand it. My peers who are veterans, been doing this forever. It just seems they gravitate toward the most cumbersome, gummed up stuff, and I'm not certain why. And I guess it's sense of authority. It's sense that it creates some level of authority beyond themselves, beyond the players, beyond the imaginings. That this counts more than that because this you have to abide by 67 rules. Now you're doing something. Well, if I have tools, I have rules. And if I have tools, I have rules. I got enough. Tools are rules.